This is part four of the discussion talking about immigrants and their role and far right propaganda. And in this part four, we would continue talking about role of immigration and contribution of immigrants. And of course, we touched upon class aspect in part 3. We shall continue that. Many in UK believe that underlying factors must be addressed if the rise of far right is to be reversed. And as you might know that Europe is witnessing the rise of uh, far right parties or ultranationalists have already won elections in Austria. They also seem to be dominant in French politics and in the Netherlands as well. They are also dominant and other parts of Europe, including Germany. Socialists say that the far right may talk about two tiers of the police system, but they tends to ignore the invisible social apartheid that prevents poor white people from joining certain elitist clubs, depriving them of all leisure and entertainment owing to their meager resources of earning. The contention is that Farage and Nigel Farage and Tommy Robinson don't talk about the two tier of social justice social system that is the biggest enemy of the working classes of the country, majority of whom are, of course, white. Many in the UK believe that the underlying factors must be addressed if the rise of the far right is to be reversed. For instance, housing is one of the major issues that need immediate attention from the government. A report from Shelter, an NGO working on housing issues, showed last year that at least 3,000 and 300,000, more than 300,000 and 309,000 to be precise in England, might spend Christmas without a home, including almost 140,000 children. Another NGO called Crisis, working on housing, says there are already 5 million affordable homes in the UK. The NGO believes that with the right government action, providing enough genuinely affordable housing is a real possibility. In addition to that, the government must tackle rising unemployment, which was 4.6% in June this year. And unemployment has exacerbated over the decades because of greedy capitalists, the majority of whom are white, who relocated their businesses to India and other countries for the sake of profit. But their gargantuan appetite for profit is never condemned by Farage, Tommy, and other ultranationalists. Hundreds of thousands or possibly millions of British would be provided with sources of employment if such relocation for voracious greed is halted. You would not find even a single tweet on this issue from ultranationalists, let alone a sustained campaign or even fiery statements. This is what critics say. It is widely believed that the years of Tory rule have badly affected working class people of all backgrounds. Critics believe, especially the trade unions especially point out the austerity horrors that were caused by the policy of the Conservative Party, citing reports of various institutions and media outlets. The union's website claims that the Tory government acts almost 5,000 bus routes, asserting that railways prices were increased by 30% in a decade. Naturally, it affected working class people of all background badly. The website says that the National Health System's elective care list is at record levels in England, exceeding 7.4 million, revealing that nearly 5 million patients each month in England wait for more than a fortnight for GP appointment. The union accuses the Tories of neglecting the NHS, which requires nearly 112,000 full time equivalent staff vacancies, including 40,000 nurses. So many critics believe that these are some of the underlying factors that have to be tackled. The union bemoans the fact that 6.7 million people are currently living in fuel poverty, while the companies in this sector made 45 billion pound profit from the UK domestic energy system in 2022 alone. Quote, if that money had been kept in public hands, it could have been used to save each household £1,800 on their energy bills. End quote. The website also points out the plight of students whose loans are estimated to be around 460 billion pound in 2021-2022 prices by the mid of 2040 or 40s 2040s decade. So it seems to be the second largest, perhaps after the American, after the loans, student loans in in the United States. The union claims that schools spending per pupil in England fell by 9.0% in real terms between 2009 and 2010 and 2019 and 2020, the largest cut in 40 years. It is estimated that 14 billion has been taken out of the welfare system since 2010 and 2011. So these are the horrors of austerity that critics point out, and these austerity measures were taken by the Tories. Critics believe that this brutal austerity greatly affected people's living standard. The union says that between 2008, 2009, and 2020 and 2021, the number of food bank users increased every year from just under 26,000 to more than 2.56 million. Quote, in 2022-23, approximately 2.99 million people used a food bank in the United Kingdom. Around 4.2 million children, or 29% of children in the UK, are living in poverty. In addition to that, public spending cuts have closed almost 800 libraries in the past decade. In 2018, in 2018, it was claimed almost 700 local authority run facilities, toilets in the UK had closed since 2010. One in eight, which is more or less one in eight, while 65 swimming pools had also closed, either for the time being temporarily or permanently during the Tory times. Between 2009 and 2010 and 2019 and 2020, local authority spending on waste collection fell by 16% in real terms. Official figures show that 1,342 children's centers have also been closed over the same decade. Amidst these cuts, it was also revealed that the richest 50 families in the UK have more wealth than the bottom half of the UK population, 33.5 million people. When the first rich list was compiled in 1989, a rich person had uh, 6,000 times the average person. So he had perhaps 6,000 times more than the average person. Today it is 18,000 times. So it is not the hardships of people caused by the austerities. It is the hardships of the people caused by the austerity policy of Tory and other governments that need to be addressed to counter the tide of the far right that is pushing the country towards polarization and disharmony. But you would not see, critics would say, any far right activist making a hue and cry on this rising inequality and brutal austerity. They might make tall claims about the welfare of working people, but in reality, critics see them as the stooges of private capital who ardently support the naked free market onslaught that has created immense hardships for working class people. It is not only the far right or the Tories who should be blamed for the entire crisis. Some Muslim extremists are also busy implementing their divisive agenda, spewing venom against secularism, advocating for inhuman punishments, and romanticizing terrorism. Their attitude towards women is also appalling. Such attitudes provide the far right an opportunity to defame Muslims and immigrants. These Muslim extremists tend to forget that their hegemonic attitude and open war against Western values of secularism and women's emancipation could create immense hardships for Muslim and other immigrants. No indigenous people of any country can tolerate this. They want freedom of religion in Western societies but are not ready to extend the same freedoms to minority in their own countries. They even want to curb such freedoms for minorities in Western countries. But what the far right chooses to ignore is the fact that most Muslims don't approve of such radical thoughts and will never vote for them if such groups contest elections. Some elements were rejected in Pakistan and Indonesia, the two most populous Muslim nations on earth, who have never voted Islamists, barring a couple of times. Most of the time, they have elected uh, democratic parties or moderate parties. Most British Muslims are politically moderate, voting for the Conservative, Liberal, and Labour Party. So they have voted for mainstream party. If they had really subscribed to the ideology of this tiny section of Muslim extremists, they would have formed a political party on these ideological lines. But they are pragmatists, voting for the parties that can solve their day-to-day issues rather than the people delivering sermons on some imagined world or imagined caliphate. The far right is also wrong in asserting that many Muslims don't speak English or like British culture. Older generations indeed find it hard to speak the language, but one would hardly find any young person who cannot communicate in English or who doesn't have a flair for English food and music. Therefore, the government must address socioeconomic issues that are fueling far right popularity, besides creating a narrative that debunks the false claims of people like Farage and Tommy. They seem to be winning the narrative war despite all the efforts of the British government. So that was part four, and I hope that you would comment on that. And I'm open to answer any question that may be there. You could put the questions in comment section.